Now, before we dive deeper into dependency injection and some other important features Angular offers to you, which you should know about, before we do that, I want to come back to the application as it is and show you something interesting. Because if you open the developer tools and you got the Angular developer tools installed, you'll find an injector tree area in there, in the Angular developer tools. And for that, you must have the Angular DevTools extension installed in your browser. But if you have that, then in the Angular developer tools, you'll find this injector tree tab. And there you can actually see that injector tree, which I mentioned on the slide, where you see that null injector, which is there to throw errors, the platform injector, the root environment injector, and then the element injector for the app component in this case. And you'll also get a list of all the things, all the injectable values that are provided for these different injectors. So for example, you can see that the null injector, in the end, if you select that, doesn't seem to provide anything because this didn't update here on the right. The platform injector, on the other hand, has some things that are built into Angular, which are in the end available to all Angular applications you might have registered in one Angular project. The root injector has even more things, even more built-in things, which you could all inject into your components and directives. And it, for example, also has this tasks service and the logging service. These two services which we created. They are registered there, as you can see. The element injector of the app component then has much less, as you can tell, because I haven't registered anything there. But it can be interesting to see that injector tree in action here and to browse and find out what's registered where. That's just a brief note I wanted to leave here. So now that we learned how to inject services into services and we had a look at this injector tree in the developer tools, I want to dive a bit deeper into the dependency injection mechanism offered by Angular. And I want to start by diving a bit deeper into how services or injectable values in general are registered with Angular. And I already showed you different places where you can register services, for example. And I mentioned that this @injectable approach is the most common way of registering it. But I want to show you what's happening behind the scenes in the end when you register a service. And for that, I'll comment out @injectable and go back to the main TS file. And there, I'll bring back this code where I provide the tasks service like this instead, which also works as you saw before. I got no error here when switching to that code. But this code here is actually a shortcut for an alternative way of registering your service. And you would typically use that shortcut, don't get me wrong, but I find it important to understand what's happening behind the scenes. Because what is happening behind the scenes is that Angular creates a provider object, which is registered with the providers here in the end. And that's an object which has a provide property and then one of these other use properties here, like use class, use existing, use factory, or use value. And the idea behind this provide property is that it registers the so-called injection token of the injectable thing you're trying to register, so of the service you're trying to register in this case here. And the idea behind an injection token is simply that it acts as the identifier of the injectable thing. Now, by default, when you use that shortcut, the name of the service class is the token. That's why in the places where you need it, in the tasks list component, for example, you can use it as a token as an identifier passed to the inject function or in the constructor function. So that is the identifier that tells Angular what you want to inject. But you could also register your own token instead. And you can create such a token, let's say the tasks service token, by constructing a new value of type injection token like this. And that is something that's imported from @AngularCore, this injection token thing here. Now, injection token then needs a description, which in the end is used internally and for debugging purposes, which is up to you. And here I'll name it tasks service token like this. But again, this is up to you. It's just some identifier that can help with debugging error messages, for example. But now that we got such a token here, we can go back to this manual configuration mode here and then set this tasks service token as a value for the provide property. Now we just also need to add one of these use properties. And if we wanna make a class injectable, as it's the case here, where this tasks service class should be injectable, you wanna use class here. And then use tasks service like this. And that would be the long form with a custom injection token of providing your tasks service to the application. Now, if you wanted to inject it, you would have to use your own token. Otherwise, you'll get an error that the dependency isn't found, because in the code, in the tasks list component, for example, we're still looking for a value with an injection token of tasks service, and this injection token isn't registered anymore. Instead, this is my injection token now, tasks service token. So it's that token that now needs to be used in other places of the app. And therefore I'll export it here. And you might want to store it in a separate file. Here I'll just leave it in this file and I'll export it. And in the tasks list component, I now have to import and use this tasks service token like this. With that, TypeScript complains because it doesn't understand which kind of value will be provided through that token. It's an unknown value. Because indeed, when we set up that token, we don't tell TypeScript which kind of value will be provided through it. That's why injection token is a generic class, and you can use angle brackets to add extra type information to it. In this case, you would tell TypeScript which kind of value will be provided through that token. And in that case, that will be a value of type tasks service, since we're providing an instance of this class. With this annotation added here, the errors here would go away. Now, the task item component needs a similar treatment, because there, injecting the tasks service like this won't work. Instead, it's now the tasks service token that's needed. And the new task component also needs an adjustment. Here I'm using the constructor, and therefore here we also want to import from this main file and import this tasks service token, and we could try to use that as a value here now. But as you see, this would now give us an error, because indeed when using a custom token, you can't use it as a type definition like this. Instead, now you need to add a special decorator in front of your parameter here when using this constructor approach for injecting. And it's the inject decorator that you need to use here, which is provided by Angular. So not the inject function with a lowercase I, but the inject decorator with an uppercase I. And then you can pass your tasks service token as a value to that. We now need to set the type of value we'll get here for the tasks service. And that of course still will be the task's service instance, but we're now injecting it with help of our custom token. With that all done, the app will work again. As you can tell, that's all working, but now with help of a custom injection token. And of course, this is more complex than just using that shortcut, which is why you typically would use that shortcut. Nonetheless, for advanced use cases, you might need to register custom injection token and work with those, and you should know what happens under the hood when using that shortcut we used before. Therefore, this is the code you would typically not use, but you should still know about, and now you do. And now we're going to build up on that knowledge to inject non-service values, because it turns out that you can do that as well.